All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Aquila and Priscilla Ministries back in the building. You already know who it is, your boy D-Road the Truth. Today we're going to come to the people with a new series, man, that Aquila and Priscilla Ministries is going to put forth by way of the Ruach Kodesh. It's called Spirit versus Flesh. And this is where we're going to take topics and look at the spiritual side versus the flesh side, right? To show you that you can sin in flesh and you can sin in spirit. You can worship in flesh, you can worship in spirit, right? And our God is a spirit, so we need to worship him in spirit and in truth, all right? So we just going to look at this, right? Spirit versus flesh. Like I said, this is a series. I don't know how many topics that we're going to bring out, however many the Ruach put on us, you know. So this first one we're going to do, though, is adultery, right? We're going to look at the carnal side of adultery, and we're going to look at the spiritual side of adultery, all right? First thing we're going to do, though, is look at the definition of adultery, all right? So we're going to go to the Revell Bible Dictionary, and this is on page 25, and I'm just going to read definitions of adultery. And then we're going to get into the scripts. Look at the fleshly side of adultery, and again, the spiritual side of adultery. All right. So this is a Revell Bible Dictionary on page 25, and it reads, adultery is a specific sexual sin forbidden in both testaments. In the Old Testament, adultery often symbolizes spiritual unfaithfulness. That's when God's people turn to idolatry. And again, we're going to look at that. All right. Here's some more definitions. In the Bible, sexual intercourse is considered appropriate only within marriage. A variety of sexual sins are mentioned in Scripture, ranging from premarital intercourse to prostitution, rape, homosexuality, and bestiality. Okay, these are all forms of fornication, right? Fornication is unlawful sex. So those sins that I just read are forms of fornication, right? In this list of prescribed behavior, adultery is clearly defined. Adultery is a sexual relationship with a married person who is not one's spouse. The Old Testament law specifies the death penalty for adultery, indicating how seriously it is viewed. All right, so we got the definition, got the foundation of what adultery is. All right, so let's look at this. First script we're going to go to is Exodus chapter 20, verse 14. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. We're just going to go through a few scriptures to show you what's carnal adultery and what's spiritual adultery. All right, so let's go. Exodus. We're going to start with the flesh. This is flesh or carnal adultery, right? So let's go to Exodus chapter 20, and we're going to do verse 14. Exodus 20, verses 14, and it reads, plain and simple, thou shalt not commit adultery. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. Thou shalt not commit adultery. All right, Leviticus chapter 20, we're going to do verse 10. Leviticus 20, verse 10. Spiritual versus flesh. Spirit versus flesh. All right. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, and it reads, and the man that committed adultery with another man's wife, even he that committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Okay, so just like we read in that Revell Bible Dictionary, the seriousness of it, we just came to the 66 and read that, right? That adultery was a serious crime punishable by death, right? And it still is today. We're going to look at that. All right, let's go to Leviticus 18:20. Right now, we just showing you the carnal, right, of adultery, right? The carnal side of adultery. All right, we're going to go to Leviticus chapter 18, and we're going to do verses 20. 18 verses 20, and it reads, moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife to defile thyself with her. You see that? So laying carnally with your neighbor's wife, that's what defiles you. That's a way to defile yourself. You know, on our way to learning something, on our way to learning something. smoking, dancing, and drinking doesn't defile you per se. But laying with another man's wife, you're laying with your neighbor's wife, that defiles you. See that? That's adultery. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to Proverbs Chapter 6. I said we're not going to be long with these series. We're just going to show you, right, the carnal side of the sin and the spirit side of the sin, right? So let's go to Proverbs Chapter 6. Proverbs 6. Proverbs Chapter 6. And we're going to do, where we at? Proverbs 6, we're going to do 26 through 29. You know what? Hold on. My fault. Go to Mark. Now we on Mark. My fault. Mark 10. Mark 10, 11, and 12. That was something else. Sorry, y'all. Mark 10, 11, and 12. Mark 10, 11, and 12. We had the book of Mark, chapter 10. We're going to do verse 11 and 12, and it reads, and he says unto them, whosoever shall put away his wife and marry another committed adultery. Now, you can go in another book of the New Testament that talks about this same situation, but it goes in a little bit more detail. It tells you, whosoever shall put away his wife other than infidelity, right? So, what is this saying? If you put your wife away because she done gained a little weight and you don't like how she look no more, right? And then you go get another wife, that's adultery because you didn't put your wife away lawfully. You see what I'm saying? That's adultery, right? And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married to another, she committed adultery, right? Because see, the Most High doesn't see divorce. Only way you can divorce your spouse is if there's infidelity involved, or if that spouse is forcing you to sin, or he's just beating you to a bloody pulp, it's what's that, right? Or dead, right? It's grounds for divorce in the eyes of the Father. You can't just divorce your wife because she ain't cleaning the bathrooms like you want her to. You know what I'm saying? You do that, then you go marry. That's adultery. You see what I'm saying? Think about this, people. Let's go to John chapter 8. One more on flesh adultery, then we're gonna move to the spirit. Let's go John chapter 8. John chapter 8. This is another look at how serious adultery was looked at, right? John chapter 8, we're gonna do 3 verses 11, and it reads, this is John chapter 8, verse 3 through 11. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought him a woman taken in adultery, and they set her in the midst. They said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? Now, remember, we just read in the law of Moses what's supposed to happen to adulterers, right? It said the adulterer and the adulteress, right? Both of them are supposed to be put to death. Well, when we read this, it looks like they only have the adulterer, right? So we looking at unjust judgment right here, if I'm not mistaken. You see what I'm saying? This they said, tempting him. Verse 6. That they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one. See that? Being convicted by their own conscience, because they knew, per the law, that they was off. You see what I'm saying? These Pharisees and scribes know the law. You see what I'm saying? And when he told them that, dang, he right. You see what I'm saying? How that work, right? one by one, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, and said unto her, now listen to this, woman, where are those thine accusers? Have none condemned thee? She said, no man. She said, no man. No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. You see that? So that's the judgment, right? He couldn't condemn her because they didn't have the adulterer. You see that? So he just told her, hey, look, repent and don't do it again. You see what I'm saying? But we see the seriousness of adultery. You sleep with another man's wife, you're supposed to be put to death, right? Women, you sleep with your sister's husband, you're supposed to be put to death, man. That's just the bottom line of it, right? All right, now let's flip the script. Let's go to this spiritual adultery, right? Spiritual adultery. All right. Now you might, well, before I say that, let's look into this first. Let's go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 3. Now we're looking at spiritual adultery. Spiritual fornication. Spiritual sexual sin. All right. Jeremiah chapter 3. And we're going to do 1 through 10. All right. Jeremiah chapter 3, 1 through 10, and it reads, they say, if a man put away his wife, and she go from him, and become another man's wife, shall he return unto her again? Shall not that land be greatly polluted? Now, then we just read that in the law, right? About when a man steps out on his wife or a wife steps out on her husband, it becomes defiled, right? So this is, Jeremiah is putting you in the mind of the law, right? To show you how spiritually you commit adultery. You see that? But thou hast played the harlot with many lovers, yet returned again to me, saith the Lord. Lift up thine eyes unto the high places, and see where thou hast not been lying with. So he said, look up into the high places and see who you not been lying with. Telling you that the nation of Israel has been lying with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. You see what I'm saying? Let's look at this. In the ways hast thou set for them. Hold on, wait a minute. Let me go back. This is verse 2. Lift up thine eyes unto the high places, and see where thou hast not been lying with. In the ways hast thou sat for them as the Arabian in the wilderness, and thou hast polluted the land with thy whoredoms and with thy wickedness. Therefore the showers have been withholden, and there hath been no latter rain, and thou hast a whore's forehead, thou hast refused to be ashamed. See that? Even though we're committing whoredoms as a nation, he's telling us we're not even ashamed of it. We still walking around like this, puffed up. See what I'm saying? Verse 4, wilt thou not from this time cry unto me, my Father, thou art the God of my youth? Will he reserve his anger forever? Will he keep it to the end? Behold, thou hast spoken and done evil things as thou couldest. The Lord said also unto me, in the days of Josiah the king, hast thou seen that which backsliding Israel has done? It's like I was talking to my rear before the broadcast. Israel is the only nation that can backslide. Israel is the only nation that can go or turn their back on the Lord, because Israel is the only nation that he has dealt with. Israel is the only nation that he's given his laws and oracles and commandments and statutes and judgments to. You see what I'm saying? So this is how Israel has backslidden. You see what I'm saying? You can't backslide from nothing that you wasn't a part of. You see what I'm saying? So this isn't pertaining to all these other nations. This is just the nation of Israel. You see what I'm saying? Let's look at this. You have played the harlot. And I said, verse 7, and I said after she had done all these things, turn thou unto me. But she returned not. and saw her treacherous sister Judah, and her treacherous sister Judah saw it. Now he's letting you know that not only the nation of Israel has committed these whoredoms, but you know the nation split, right? So he's talking about the northern kingdom of Israel, not just the whole nation, right? That's why he said and her treacherous Judah, sister Judah saw it. You see what I'm saying? So as our brothers and sisters to the north of us were turning their back on the Most High, worshiping false gods, committing idolatry, right? Judah saw it and started to do the same thing, right? So if you haven't caught it by now, spiritual adultery is idolatry. Once you start worshiping other gods and walking in the statutes and commandments of other gods, right, you have committed adultery to your God. You see what I'm saying? You have stepped out on your God. You see what I'm saying? Let's look at this. Verse 8. And I saw when for all the causes were backsliding, Israel committed adultery. And I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. See that? He divorced Israel because we cheated on him. Remember, he said in his law, the only way you can divorce your wife is if she step out on you. The only way you can divorce your husband is if he step out on you, right? So Israel stepped out on the Most High, so he gave him a bill of divorce, right? This is spiritual idolatry, right? I hope it's making sense. Spiritual adultery, thank you. I hope this is making sense, all right? And it came, verse 9. No, I'm middle verse 8. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also. And it came to pass through the lightness of her whoredom that she defiled the land. Remember, we talked about that. If you sleep with another man's wife, that defiles you. Well, woman, you sleep with another sister's husband, your land is defiled now. See that? Defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and with stocks. See that? With stones and with stocks. Remember in Deuteronomy 28, he said you will be worshiping wood and stone. See, that's how we commit spiritual adultery, right? Verse 10. And yet, for all this, her treacherous sister Judah had not turned unto me with her whole heart, but feignedly saith the Lord. That's it. Now let's look into this a little bit more deeper, right? This spiritual adultery, right? Which is idolatry, you know. Let's go to Ezekiel 23. Let's go to Ezekiel 23. Ezekiel 23. And we're going to do 1 through 9. Ezekiel 23, 1 through 9. Let my wife get there. Ezekiel 23, 1 through 9, and it reads, The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. Now, it's the same kind of parable that Isaiah gave, right? But Ezekiel giving it another little different, but, you know, you can see that the language and the terminology is the same, right? The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. And they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were in their breasts pressed, and there they bruised their teats of their virginity. And the names of them were Aholah, the elder, and Aholibah, her sister. And I'm not going. The scripture's going to break that down. Don't even worry about it. And they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Thus were their names: Samaria, Aholah, and Jerusalem, Aholibah. Now, just like we read in Isaiah, the nation of Israel committed whoredoms, which is Samaria, and her treacherous sister Judah saw it, which is Jerusalem, right? Because Judah's capital was what? Jerusalem. Israel's capital was Samaria. So these are the two sisters that Ezekiel is talking about. Judah and the nation of Israel, or the northern kingdom, right? Which were clothed with blue captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Did I skip one? 5. Verse 5, my fault, y'all. Verse 5. And Aholah played the harlot, and she was mine. And she dotted on her lovers as the Assyrians her neighbors. So what is she say? What is Ezekiel telling us right here? Well, the nation of Israel was taken out by the Assyrians. And right when the Assyrians came and snatched them up, they started worshiping the Assyrians' gods. This is what Ezekiel is telling us here, right? On the Assyrians, her neighbors, verse 6, which were clothed with blue captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen, riding upon horses. Thus she committed her whoredoms with them. Now see, carnally, you would think, that our daughters, when we went into Assyria, started laying with the Assyrian men, which I have no doubt happened, right? But we're talking spiritual here. You see what I'm saying? Listen to this. Thus she committed whoredoms with them, with all of them, that were chosen men of Assyria, and with all on whom she dotted, with all their idols, she defiled herself. See that? So we're not talking about fleshly sexual sins. We're talking about spiritual, because our brothers and sisters went into Assyria and started defiling themselves with the Assyrian idols, committing spiritual adultery. All right. Verse 8, neither left she her whoredoms brought from Egypt, for in her youth they lay with her, and they bruised the breast of her virginity and poured their whoredom upon her. Now, is this not true? Because once we came out of Egypt and was set up in the wilderness, and when Moses was up on that mount 40 days and 40 nights, what did we do? We built a calf and started worshiping as the Egyptians did, committing spiritual adultery, right? That's spiritual adultery, people. Worshiping false gods. Let's do this. Verse 9. Wherefore I have delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians, upon whom she dotted. Right? So this is what the Most High would do. Right? When you turn your back on him and start cheating with him on other gods, he will turn you over to them. See what I'm saying? That's how that works, people. Let's get more into this though. Let's look at Ezekiel chapter 8 right quick. Ezekiel chapter 8. Let's look at them in the act, right? Ezekiel chapter 8. We're going to start at verse 1 and we're going to do some skipping. I didn't even write this down, so this just came to me, y'all, so bear with me. Ezekiel chapter 8. We're going to start at verse 1, though. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in mine house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of the Lord God fell upon me. Skip down to 3. And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in the vision of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looked toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. And behold, the glory of God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the pain. All right, let's skip over to verse 9. We in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 9. And he said unto me, go in, and behold the wicked abominations that they do here. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house Israel portrayed upon the wall round about. All right, skip down to verse 12. Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark? Every man in the chambers of his imagery. For they say, the Lord seeth us not. The Lord has forsaken the earth. And he says unto me, turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see even greater abominations that they do. Let's go look at these abominations that they do. Verse 14. Then he brought me to the Lord's door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Not weeping for the Messiah, weeping for Tammuz. Not weeping for the Father, weeping for Tammuz. See that? In the temple. Then said he unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshiped the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah? Because remember, the house of Judah seen their sister Israel doing it, right? So instead of Judah turning to the Lord, they did what their sister did. See, this is the act of spiritual adultery. See that? O son of man, is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence and have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. This ain't smoking weed, people. I just want to say that. When he talk about put the branch to their nose, that's not smoking weed, man. That's another pagan ritual that they used to do. So you brothers that's teaching smoking weed and coming to this scripture, the teaching that you shouldn't smoke weed and coming to this scripture using that, stop that, man. That ain't got nothing to do with smoking weed. Verse 18. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. See that? When you worshiping other gods, weeping for Tammuz, and a lot of us just weep for Tammuz about a week ago when you was bending over, taking them Christmas presents up under that Christmas tree. You was weeping for Tammuz, man. See that? Because he was the God that was born on December 25th. You see? So I'm just saying, a lot of us committed spiritual adultery here last week and last night. The god of Janus. Yeah, you celebrated Janus last night. So you just committed spiritual adultery last night. If you a so-called Hebrew Israelite or a so-called Black American, African American, I'm just going to tell you whether you know it or not. Let's keep moving though. Hosea. Let's go to Hosea. Spiritual adultery. And after this, we got like two or three more. We be done. Spiritual adultery. Hosea chapter 4. Hosea chapter 4. And we going to do 1 through 2, and we going to skip. Hosea chapter 4, 1 through 2, and it reads, Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. Remember, see, he's always talking to the children of Israel. He didn't say, Hear ye the word, hear the word of the Lord, ye children of the nations of the world. Hear ye the word of the Lord, ye children of the Mexicans. Hear ye the word of the Lord, ye children of the Native Americans. No. Hear ye the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. Nah, because we weeping for Tammuz. We celebrating Janus. Here next month, we going to be celebrating Tammuz again. That's Valentine. Yes, that's Tammuz too. Or his mama. What's his mama name? Semiramis, the mother of heaven. Research this, people. See, there's no knowledge. There's no truth in the land right now. See that? By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood touches blood. See that? Let's skip to verse 12, and we're going to do 12 through 13. My people ask counsel at their stock, and their staff declareth unto them. For the spirit of whoredoms has caused them to err. The spirit of whoredoms has caused them to err. See that? And they have gone a whoring from under their God. See that? 13. They sacrifice upon the tops of mountains and burn incense upon the hills under oaks and poplars and elms, because the shadow thereof is good. They think that when they do this under these the shadows of these these elm trees and these oak trees, that no one sees them. See that? But the Most High sees all. Therefore your daughters shall commit whoredoms, and your spouses shall commit adultery. See that? Let's go to Exodus. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Skip down to verse 16 through 19. Verse 16, this is Hosea chapter 4, verses 16. For Israel slideth back as a backsliding heifer. For Israel slideth back like a backsliding heifer, not the nations of the world. See, the nations of the world just celebrated their holiday. They just worship their God. So they're not backsliding. We're backsliding when we participate in these holidays, in these pagan rituals. You see what I'm saying? For Israel slideth back as a backsliding heifer. Now the Lord will feed them as a lamb in a large place. Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. Ephraim is another name for the northern kingdom. That's what he called the northern kingdom. Like the southern kingdom is Judah, right? From the fourth son, Judah, right? The northern kingdom was referred to as Ephraim, Joseph's youngest son. Ephraim was the biggest tribe of the northern kingdom. So when he referred to the northern kingdom, he say Ephraim a lot of times, right? Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. That's what he's telling Judah. Let Ephraim alone. But remember, we read in Jeremiah that Judah seen Israel doing backsliding, so they joined in it. Hosea is telling, hey, you see Ephraim going off, leave him alone. You see your other people going off, Israel, leave them alone. You see your other people celebrating Christmas, you tell them, but they try to kick against it, leave them alone. See what I'm saying? Leave them alone. Don't do what they do. This is why. Their drink is sour. They have committed whoredom continually. The rulers with shame do love give thee. The wind hath bound her up in her wings, and they shall be ashamed because of their sacrifices. See that? He's going to put you on Front Street, man. You're going to be ashamed at the end of the day. You see what I'm saying? Let's keep moving, though. Let's go to Exodus 32. Spiritual adultery. Exodus 32. And we're going to do 1 through 5. Because remember he said we took the hoarders from Egypt with us. Right? So let's go look at this. Ezekiel 32, 1 through 5. And it reads, And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Not, man, y'all tripping, going back to y'all camps and pray and wait for the deliverance of the Lord. He didn't say, get out of my face, y'all tripping. I rebuke you, Satan. What did he say? Where I'm at. Verse 2. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings, which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people break off the golden earrings, which are in their ears, which is in their ears. And all the people break off the golden earrings, which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graving tool. And after he had made it a molten calf. See that? They brought the whoredoms from Egypt. Right? And they said, These be the gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. You see that? So that's another form of spiritual adultery. Just like we read in Ezekiel chapter 8, how they was demonstrating in the temple, right? This is how we demonstrated before the temple, right? Before the temple was constructed, right? So spiritual adultery versus flesh adultery. Spiritual adultery is cheating on your God. Spiritual adultery is turning your back on your God, stepping out on your God, worshiping other gods. Spiritual adultery. Carnal adultery is you being married, stepping out on your spouse. That's the difference. So that's the lesson. Spirit versus flesh. This was the first installment, adultery. I hope folks was edified. Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Shalom.